Love. It's everywhere, isn't it? Every great song, every classic novel, the conversations that really matter.
Absolutely. For centuries, we've sort of treated it as this beautiful, almost untouchable mystery.
Yeah, something for the poets, maybe theologians.
Right. But that era, well, it feels like it's shifting dramatically.
It really does. The amount of hard data, the science that's coming out now on the biology, the sociology, even the raw chemistry of connection, it's just exploding.
It is. We're moving past metaphor, really, and into measurement.
And that explosion is exactly what we're diving into today, isn't it?
That's the plan. Our mission here is to give you a really comprehensive deep dive into, well, the last decade or so of academic research. We're focusing specifically on 2013 to 2022.
Okay.
And we're pulling mainly from this huge bibliometric analysis, get this, 6,858 publications on romantic love.
Wow, that's a lot of papers.
It is, and we're supplementing that with findings from neuroscience, evolutionary psychology, relationship studies, the whole gamut.
So we're kind of stripping away the romance, just for a bit, to look at the machinery underneath.
Pretty much, we're talking hormones, survival mechanisms, those neural pleasure circuits.
And how it all quantifiably benefits, your life, your health.
Exactly. We're going straight into the heart of the brain, places like the ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens.
To really understand why we crave what we crave, why love feels the way it does.
And I think it's important right up front to frame this around a core tension, something the sources themselves wrestle with.
Which is?
Is love just, an emotion, a simple chemical cascade we've dressed up in fancy words? Or is it something deeper, an adaptation honed over millennia for survival?
Or maybe all of the above.
The data strongly suggests it's an incredibly complex mix of all three. You really can't understand modern love without looking across disciplines, psychology, sociology, biology, hard neuroscience. It's all connected.
Okay, so let's start with that big picture then. The research landscape itself.
Yeah.
Looking at the last 10 years, this science of love, is it just a small niche thing, or is it really becoming a major field?
Oh, it's accelerating dramatically. That's maybe the first big takeaway for you. That period, 2013 to 2022, saw those 6,858 publications.
Right, the number you mentioned.
Yeah, and that shows steady growth. But the real story, the kicker, is the impact of that work.
Oh.
Citation counts. They saw roughly a 90-fold increase by 2022.
90-fold. In citations, that's astronomical.
It really is. It means this research isn't just, sitting on a digital shelf somewhere.
No, it's being used. It's foundational. It's fueling more questions, influencing other fields.
Precisely. It really signals the definitive academization of love. It's moved from philosophy into hard science.
And that kind of surge, that suggests they're finally getting the right tools, right? Like better brain imaging, maybe genetic markers.
Exactly. Advanced brain imaging, rigorous, large-scale behavioral studies. They can finally start measuring concepts that were, well, previously unquantifiable. They're validating this as a critical field of human biology and psychology.
Was that growth completely smooth over the decade? Or were there any blips?
Almost smooth, just one temporary interruption, and it's one we can all relate to.
Let me guess. COVID.
You got it. A slight dip in publications around 2019. Researchers pretty strongly attribute that to the pandemic's impact.
Makes sense. Research priorities shifted, labs shut down.
Exactly. But the key thing is the overall trajectory quickly bounced back and kept climbing steeply.
Okay, so the field's exploding. Is this explosion happening everywhere equally? Or are there specific hotspots leading the charge?
Not evenly distributed at all. When you map research potency, that's like a measure of output, quality, funding, influence.
Right.
The United States leads significantly.
Okay. Any particular institutions within the U.S.?
Definitely. There's a clear powerhouse, the University of California system. They account for the lion's share of these publications.
Wow. So that suggests, a few key labs getting consistent major funding?
That's the likely scenario. It allows them to really dominate the research output in this area.
And when you have that kind of concentration, specific researchers usually emerge as leaders, right?
Yeah.
Any key names we should be aware of?
Yeah, the bibliometric analysis highlights Emily A. Impet. She's cited as the most prolific author in this specific field during that decade.
Emily A. Impet. Okay. And where is this research typically getting published? Any top journals?
The analysis points to the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships as one of the really dominant outlets. Knowing these names, these venues, it gives you a real sense of where the power centers of this knowledge creation are.
Got it. So we know where it's happening, who's doing it. Let's talk about what they're studying. Based on those keyword searches you mentioned, the citation counts. What are the big emerging trends, the real hotspots right now?
Okay, so we identified three primary keywords that have just surged recently in citations. They really point to where the cutting edge is.
Let's hear the first one.
First up is same-sex relationships.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it's a crucial area of growth because researchers are really digging into the unique minority stress pressures these couples often face. It's not just about general relationship stuff.
Right, it's about the external factors too, like societal stigma.
Exactly. Stigma, shame linked to sexual orientation, especially in, traditionally heteronormative societies, that adds a whole layer of complexity.
So the research isn't just documenting differences, it's aimed at finding solutions, like targeted support.
Precisely. The focus is shifting towards developing effective dual interventions.
Dual interventions, meaning what?
Meaning they support the couple's internal dynamic, communication, conflict, that sort of thing. But they also actively address those external factors, things like internalized homonegativity.
Ah, right, when societal prejudice kind of gets inside your own head.
Exactly. And they're also looking at how big societal crises, like COVID again, might disproportionately affect same-sex couples requiring tailored support.
Okay, really important work. What's the second hotspot?
That would be conflict resolution.
Ah, the big one.
Yeah, and it tackles that fundamental, almost painful human irony, doesn't it? The person you love most.
Is often the one you fight most fiercely with. Or most destructively sometimes.
Precisely. That high emotional investment makes conflicts incredibly high stakes, potentially really damaging.
So what are they looking at specifically within conflict resolution? New techniques.
Everything from new modalities, like using technology, which we'll get to the underlying neural mechanisms. What actually happens in the brain when mediation works?
Okay, interesting. We'll definitely circle back to that.
Yeah.
And the third major trend.
Social relationships, but more broadly.
Okay, how does that fit in?
Well, this keyword surge reflects a more holistic view. Romantic love isn't this isolated thing. For many, it's the most intense form of social connection they have.
Yeah.
So understanding its neurobiology, using fMRI to map social bonding in romantic partners gives us invaluable insights into how all human social bonds work, how they form, how they're maintained.
Which ultimately ties right back to mental health, well-being.
Exactly. It's like defining the gold standard for healthy human interaction. Romantic love becomes this incredibly detailed, high-resolution case study of what a successful, supportive bond looks like psychologically, socially, and neurologically.
That pivot to neuroscience is perfect. It takes us right into that messy, exciting, sometimes terrifying reality of falling in love.
Mhm.
And if we look at the chemistry, maybe the most striking idea emerging is this concept of romantic love as an addiction.
It really is a profound shift in how we think about it. Intense, early-stage romantic love is now scientifically conceptualized as a natural addiction.
Natural addiction. Okay, unpack that.
It means it shares essentially identical neurocircuitry with substance abuse drugs, alcohol, and also behavioral addictions, things like gambling or even just seeing appealing food or compulsive shopping.
Wait, so are you saying when I'm obsessively thinking about someone new, or I can't stop checking my phone for a message from them? That's the same brain pathway as someone craving a drug.
On a fundamental neurochemical level, yes. That's your brain's primary motivation and reward factory just lighting up like a Christmas tree.
Wow.
Intense romantic love heavily engages the brain's reward system. We're talking key dopamine-rich regions.
Okay, dopamine. We hear that word a lot.
Right. And the main players here are the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, that's kind of the start of the dopamine highway. Then the caudate nucleus, crucial for focused attention, learning habits.
Focus attention. That explains the obsession.
It really does. And the nucleus accumbens, that's often called the pleasure center or the reinforcement hub.
So dopamine isn't just about feeling good, it's about wanting. That drive, that craving.
Exactly. Dopamine is fundamentally about motivation, about seeking behavior. It drives us to seek out that person, that reward, again and again.
So the brain activity is
Yeah.
really similar.
The neural activity seen when someone looks at a photo of their beloved is almost identical to the activity you see when, say, a drug addict anticipates getting their fix.
That's incredible.
The similarity is so strong, in fact, that individuals who are passionately in love, or, on the flip side, painfully rejected, often meet the actual clinical criteria for addiction listed in the DSM-5.
Whoa, hold on. Meeting DSM-5 criteria for addiction. How specific are we talking?
Very specific. Think about the symptoms. Euphoria, that intense high when you're with them.
Check.
Intense Craving the inability to think about much else.
Definitely check.
Tolerance needing more time, more intense interactions to get the same feeling.
What?
Emotional and even physical dependence, feeling anxious or incomplete without them.
Yeah.
And then the agony of withdrawal if you're rejected, followed, often, by relapse, going back for contact after a breakup.
Wow, it maps perfectly. The whole system is basically hijacked to focus on this one person.
That's a good way to put it. Hijacked for focused attention on a single primary reward source.
Okay, but if it's a reward system, why does falling in love often feel so anxious?
Yes.
So stressful? It's not just pure bliss, right? It can be genuinely chaotic.
That's a great question because that initial addiction phase is turbulent and stressful. It's not just smooth sailing pleasure. The process triggers a whole neurochemical cascade that looks a lot like a stress response.
Really? Like what?
Well, for starters, levels of the stress hormone cortisol shoot up significantly. That drives that anxious, hyper alert, kind of on edge feeling.
Okay, that makes sense. What about other hormones, like sex drive, mood?
Testosterone levels actually increase in both men and women,
Interesting.
which helps explain that surge in sexual desire that often comes with early love. And maybe, most critically, serotonin levels decrease.
Serotonin goes down. Isn't low serotonin linked to things like obsession and depression?
Exactly. It's often observed in obsessive states, like OCD, and also in clinical depression. This likely explains why that early anxious love feels so all-consuming, why you just can't shift your focus away from the person.
Okay, that explains the fixation. But what about the love is blind thing? We all know that feeling where we just ignore obvious flaws in a new partner. Does the science explain that?
It does beautifully. It's what some researchers call the prefrontal cortex paradox.
Like prefrontal cortex. That's
Yes.
the rational part of the brain, right? Judgment planning.
Precisely. It handles rational thought, judgment, long-term planning, social critique, all the sensible stuff. And in early passionate love, it becomes significantly less active.
It shuts down. Well, not shuts down, but less active.
Less active, yes.
Fun.
So if your friend is telling you their new partner has like a dozen obvious red flags and they completely ignore them.
It's not just them being stubborn. It's literally reduced activity in the brain region responsible for spotting those flags.
You've got it.
Yeah.
You are, in a sense, chemically less capable of rational judgment about that person in that moment. This deactivation directly contributes to impulsive behavior and that idealized, almost worshipful view of the partner where flaws are invisible. It's likely a temporary evolutionary trick to get the pair bond rolling quickly without too much critical thinking getting in the way.
Okay, so let's say we survive that initial year or two of chemical chaos. How does the brain shift gear? How do we get from that passionate, anxious addiction to a stable, lasting bond?
That's the crucial transition phase, moving into what's often called companionate love.
Yeah.
The intense chaos usually calms down, typically within 1 or 2 years.
And the chemicals change?
They do. Cortisol, the stress hormone, and serotonin levels generally return to baseline, back to normal. The fiery passion might temper a bit, but the deep bonding chemicals really take center stage, stabilizing the relationship.
Okay, tell us about these bonding chemicals, the stabilizers.
The big two are oxytocin, often called the cuddle hormone, or bonding hormone, and vasopressin.
Right.
These peptides become much more dominant. They foster that deep sense of connection, emotional security, trust. They promote long-term attachment.
But does the pleasure go away? Does the dopamine drop off?
Crucially, no. While the stress chemicals fade, the dopaminergic activity in the reward system tends to stay happily high.
Really?
Yes, you still get measurable pleasure and motivation from being with your partner, but now it's coupled with this calmer sense of security and trust, rather than anxiety and obsession.
Now, what I find really fascinating is the overlap researchers find with parental love. Is it true the brain kind of reuses the circuits built for parent-child attachment?
It absolutely seems to. The neural activity you see in stands of people in long-term, intense love overlaps significantly with brain regions active during maternal love.
Which regions specifically?
We see overlap in the VTA again, the bilateral anterior caudate body, the middle insula. These are areas linked to that primal sense of security, sustained care, the feeling you get from a primary caregiver.
So evolution basically just co-opted the system.
Yeah.
Took the mechanism designed for mother-infant bonding and adapted it for adult pair bonding.
That's a leading theory, yes. It repurposed those ancient neurochemical pathways for security and sustained care to help keep adult partners together long enough to raise offspring. It's about security, deep trust, not just fleeting passion.
And are there any unique brain signatures specifically for the companionate part, the friendship aspect of long-term love?
There seems to be. Research points to the posterior globus pallidus GP. Activity here is uniquely associated with what they call liking rewards.
Liking as opposed to wanting.
Kind of, it correlates strongly with scores on friendship-based love scales. So while passion might light up those core dopamine circuits, the long-term contented pleasure you get from simply enjoying your partner's company, that true friendship at the heart of companionate love, seems to have its own distinct, measurable neurological footprint in the GP.
This leads us perfectly into the evolutionary angle.
Yeah.
Because the science seems overwhelming now. Love isn't just a nice feeling. It's a crucial high-stakes survival mechanism, isn't it?
Absolutely. It appears to have evolved specifically to encourage pair bonding in our ancestors, hominins, ultimately to ensure reproductive success in what was likely a very harsh environment.
And it's not just one thing, right? The
Okay.
research suggests it's a whole suite of adaptations.
That's right. Romantic love seems to serve at least 4 distinct fitness-relevant functions, all geared towards securing and maintaining a successful resource-providing partnership over the long haul needed to raise human children.
Okay, let's break those down. Function number 1, mate choice. How does the biology of attraction help us make that critical decision? Who to pair up with?
Well, we need to talk about kissing again.
Kissing, okay.
Yeah.
More than just affection.
Far more. There's a whole field studying it called philematology. Kissing is seen as a critical mating behavior.
How so?
Think about saliva. It's packed with hormones, other complex chemical compounds. The theory is that kissing provides a subconscious, incredibly rapid chemical assessment.
A chemical assessment, like tasting their suitability.
In a way, yes. It's a potential way to assess the biological, maybe even genetic, suitability of a potential mate. High-speed data transfer, basically.
Wow, so that first kiss could be, biologically speaking, a screening process.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And researchers found a really interesting gender difference here.
Oh, yeah?
Because women historically face the much greater biological consequences of a poor mate choice, 9 months of pregnancy, higher initial parental investment.
Right.
They tend to value kissing more heavily, especially in the early stages of dating. They are significantly more likely than men to report that a first kiss was decisive, like it determined whether they'd continue pursuing that person or not.
Fascinating. And mate choice isn't just about the kiss or how they smell, right?
Yeah.
It's broader, assessing their whole package.
Definitely. It involves assessing what biologists call extended phenotypes.
Extended phenotypes, what's that?
These are features outside the individual's body, but still influenced by their genes that signal fitness and resource availability. Think of it like a biological billboard advertising their quality.
So in modern terms, that could be their house, their car.
Exactly. Their dwelling, the reliability of their car, maybe even their pets, the state of their clothes, their whole social media presence.
All signaling information about their ability to provide resources long term.
Correct. A large, clean home, for example, signals stability resources. These are indirectly linked to genetic markers of suitability for a long-term partnership and parental investment.
Okay, function 2, courtship.
Hmm?
Why is courtship often so expensive, time-consuming, even risky?
Well, that expense is kind of the whole point, evolutionarily speaking.
How do you mean?
Courtship, driven by that intense early romantic love, deliberately incurs costs. You expend time, resources, you risk social embarrassment, you engage in competition with rivals.
Right.
This whole process drives what evolutionary biologists call costly signaling.
Costly signaling. What's the logic there? Why show off how much you can waste?
Because if an individual is willing and able to dedicate significant resources, time, money, effort to courting someone, they're effectively advertising their high quality.
Ah, I see. Only someone genuinely fit, with plenty of resources, could afford to spend lavishly on courtship displays.
Exactly. Whether it's conspicuous consumption like fancy dinners or gifts or prolonged, elaborate courting rituals that take a lot of time and energy, it's an expensive but therefore reliable way of communicating. Look, I have resources to spare. I'm healthy, I'm genetically fit, and I'm committed enough to invest them in you.
Okay, that makes sense. Function 3, sex. How does romantic love shape sexual behavior beyond just basic desire?
Well, love is consistently cited as one of the most common reasons people give for having sex in the first place.
Right, it's not just physical.
And fundamentally, sex within a loving relationship powerfully reinforces the pair bond itself. But the mechanism for that reinforcement in humans seems quite unique. It relies heavily on touch and that specific neurochemistry we talked about.
How so? What's unique?
Think about breast and nipple stimulation. It's pretty integral to human sexual activity and pair bonding behaviors, much more so than in many other mammals. And that specific type of stimulation is an incredibly potent trigger for oxytocin release.
Ah, the bonding hormone again.
Exactly. So you get this immediate rush of oxytocin during sex, which directly reinforces the attachment, the feeling of closeness during the act itself. It cleverly co-opts the pleasure circuits, dopamine, and the bonding circuits, oxytocin, simultaneously, locking down the partnership chemically.
Hmm.
It distinguishes loving sex from, say, purely casual encounters.
Right, makes it feel different, deeper.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, the ultimate goal of all this. Function 4, pair bonding.
This is the end game, evolutionarily speaking. Pair bonding promotes the long-term stability that was absolutely essential for raising vulnerable human offspring in our ancestral past. They take a long time to mature.
So love acts as the glue.
It acts as the primary motivational driver. It encourages consistent resource provision, emotional support, psychological safety, physical resources, and crucially, it fosters relationship exclusivity.
Through things like fidelity, jealousy.
Exactly. Fidelity norms, feelings of jealousy, mate-guarding behaviors. These are all driven, in part, by love and the intense fear of losing that bond. These behaviors, while sometimes problematic in modern contexts, ultimately function to increase offspring survival by ensuring, ideally, two committed parents are investing heavily in their children over many years. Love is, fundamentally, the commitment device that underpins the family unit.
Okay, since we're really trying to define this scientifically, let's look at how psychologists have tried to categorize love, to break it down into measurable parts.
Yeah.
What are the main models?
Well, the classical models give us a good starting point. Most people have probably heard of Sternberg's triangular theory of love.
Right, the triangle.
Yeah.
Passion, intimacy, commitment.
Exactly. Sternberg proposed that romantic love, specifically, is the combination of just two of those. Intimacy, which is that feeling of closeness, connection, sharing, and passion, which is the drive, the physical arousal, the motivational component.
So in Sternberg's view, romantic love is intense and close, but not necessarily committed yet.
Precisely. Commitment is the third point of the triangle, the cognitive decision to maintain the relationship long term. And you can have intense romantic love, according to this model, without necessarily having made that conscious commitment yet.
Okay. Any other key classical models?
There's also Rubin's scales, which were foundational in trying to distinguish liking from loving.
What was the difference there?
Rubin defined loving with characteristics like attachment, deep caring, and intimacy, whereas liking was characterized more by feelings of closeness, admiration, warmth, and respect. They often go together, of course, but he argued loving has that extra layer of attachment and need.
Right, that makes sense. Liking your friend versus being in love.
Exactly. But for the really deep, sustained bonds, more modern frameworks try to be even more comprehensive, like the quadruple framework.
Quadruple framework. Okay, 4 factors. What are they? If a relationship is really going to last, what needs to be there?
This framework suggests 4 absolutely essential factors for any deep, sustained connection, whether it's romantic love, parental love, even really intense brand loyalty, interestingly.
Okay.
The 4 are connection, respect, trust, and attraction.
Connection, respect, trust, attraction.
Okay. And the really key insight here is their interdependency. They aren't separate silos. If one factor weakens, say, respect starts to erode, it inevitably pulls the others down too. It negatively affects the whole system, the overall status of the love.
It's a package deal. You can't really have lasting love if one leg of the stool is wobbly.
That's the idea. It's a holistic system.
Let's focus on maybe 2 of those that seem particularly crucial and maybe vulnerable in day-to-day life, trust and respect.
Absolutely critical. Trust is seen as the absolute bedrock for intimacy. You can't have real closeness without it.
And how is it built, maintained?
Primarily through 2 critical behaviors. First, mutual self-disclosure, both partners feeling safe enough to be vulnerable, to share their inner worlds. And second, consistent, positive partner responsiveness. That means knowing that when you reach out, when you're vulnerable or need support, your partner will reliably be there for you in a positive way.
And if that trust breaks down?
It's corrosive. Loss of trust or even just consistent mutual mistrust eats away at intimacy. It's a very strong predictor of relationship breakdown.
Okay. And what about respect? How does the framework define that?
Respect involves consistent consideration for the other person, genuine admiration, holding them in high regard, and really valuing them as an important, maybe even irreplaceable part of your life.
And how does respect interact with the other factors?
Research shows respect correlates positively not just with intimacy, but also with passion, interestingly. And crucially, it's linked with the tendency to overlook a partner's minor flaws or negative behavior.
Ah, so respect provides a kind of buffer,
I
a
don't
bit of grace.
Exactly. It provides the grace needed to navigate the inevitable small conflicts and annoyances, helping maintain the relationship through difficult times. Lack of respect is often a silent killer of connection.
Okay, so we know the components of love. But what about different types of lovers? You mentioned a recent Australian study that categorized people. What did that find?
Yeah, this was a pretty large study, the Romantic Love Survey, over 1,500 people who were currently in love. And it used statistical analysis to empirically validate four distinct types of lovers
Based on what criteria?
based on four main axes: the intensity of their feelings, the amount of obsessive thinking about their partner, their level of commitment, and their reported sexual frequency.
Okay. And what were the types? Did most people fall into one category?
Most people actually fell into the baseline mild or moderate romantic types. These are folks who are generally committed, feel love, feel stable, but aren't necessarily off the charts in terms of obsessive thinking or overwhelming intensity. They likely form the bulk of stable, long-term relationships.
So, right, the comfortable middle ground. But the extremes are always more interesting. What were the poles of this spectrum?
Okay, first you have the intense romantic type. They made up just under 30% of the sample.
So, quite a few people.
Yeah. And these are your textbook crazy in love individuals. They scored highest across the board, highest intensity, most obsessive thinking, highest commitment. And they also had relatively high sexual frequency. They're living that high wire act of passionate love.
Any gender differences there?
Interestingly, yes. The study found that about 6 out of every 10 people falling into this intense romantic category were female.
So that consuming all or nothing emotional experience might be slightly more common, or at least reported that way, among women in this study. Okay, what's the other extreme?
That would be the libidinous romantic type. A smaller group, about 9.6%, almost 10%.
Libidinous. Okay, I think I know where this is going.
Yep. They are defined primarily by one spectacular metric: exceptionally high frequency of sex.
How high are we talking?
The average for this group was about 10 times a week. Some reported up to 20 times a week.
Wow, okay.
Now, they still scored pretty high on intensity and obsessive thinking, so it wasn't just sex. But that sheer volume of sexual activity really set them apart as a distinct group.
And gender difference here.
This group skewed slightly more male. So it really highlights that the behavioral manifestation of love, especially the passionate component, can vary pretty dramatically across the population. It's not one size fits all.
Okay, let's loop back to those research hotspots we identified earlier. Conflict resolution was a big one, tackling that paradox where we hurt the ones we love. What are researchers finding about making conflict more constructive, especially with modern tools?
Right. So one trend was looking at the role of technology, specifically computer-mediated communication, or CMC.
Like texting, email, DMs, video calls.
Exactly. They compared conflict discussions couples had face-to-face versus those they had using these technologies.
And what did they find? Did arguing via text make things worse, like maybe more misinterpretations?
Surprisingly, no. They actually found no significant differences in the levels of pain or anger the partners reported, or even in their ability to resolve the conflict, whether it's face-to-face or via CMC.
Huh. So the medium didn't matter as much as maybe the underlying relationship.
That seems to be the implication. The context, the emotional investment, might override the specific modality. But perhaps more importantly, other studies use neuroimaging to look at what happens in the brain when conflict resolution is successful.
Okay. What happens when a couple actually manages to navigate a tough fight and make up?
It's literally rewarding. Successful mediation, successfully resolving the conflict, was linked to increased activity in the nucleus accumbens.
The reward circuit again.
Exactly. The same place that lights up for food, sex, and early love, successfully navigating conflict and repairing the bond feels good to the brain.
So the brain is basically training you, rewarding you for making peace.
That's a great way to see it. It provides a powerful neurochemical incentive for long-term stability. Repair feels good, so you're motivated to do it.
Okay, the other crucial growth area we flagged was the focus on same-sex relationships. What's the key takeaway there?
The research is really emphasizing the impact of those unique minority stress pressures we talked about.
Right, the external stuff.
Yeah. And it's underscoring the need for those complex dual interventions. It's not enough just to focus on the couple's internal issues, communication patterns, etc.
You had to address the societal context, too.
Precisely. Interventions need to also tackle factors like internalized homonegativity, that self-stigma or shame that can arise from living in a non-affirming society. That can put immense strain on a relationship, regardless of how compatible the couple is internally. The societal context is an active stressor that needs direct attention in therapy or support programs.
Got it. Now, I found those fMRI studies on couples doing leisure activities together really cool because they seem to give a scientific basis to that old saying about couples becoming more alike over time, even thinking alike.
That's exactly what's so exciting about them. So researchers studied soon-to-be married couples. First, they confirmed the pretty obvious thing. Marital satisfaction tends to go up when couples enjoy doing leisure activities together. No big surprise there. But then they went deeper. They had the couples do a decision-making task while in an fMRI scanner, and they found that the rate at which couples matched on their preferred leisure activities actually correlated with several things.
Like what?
It correlated with how long they'd been courting, how similar their personalities were, and this is the mind-blowing part, the spatial similarity of their right frontoparietal social brain networks during that decision task.
Whoa. Okay, break that down. Right frontoparietal social brain network.
Yeah.
What does that do? And what does spatial similarity mean here?
Okay, so that network is heavily involved in social cognition theory of mind, basically. Your ability to understand someone else's perspective, predict their choices, read their intentions.
Yeah.
And spatial similarity means that the physical patterns of brain activity in that specific network looked more alike between partners who shared more leisure interests.
So successful long-term partners literally start to process social information and make certain kinds of decisions using more similar neural pathways. Their brains become more aligned.
That's what the data suggests. They've effectively tuned their neural maps to better predict, understand, and enjoy activities together. It's a profound measure of deep compatibility, maybe even symbiosis, developing at the neural level.
That is genuinely fascinating. Did they find any gender differences in that leisure study?
They did find one interesting point. The rate of individual leisure activity participation, like having your own hobbies separate from the partner, was positively associated with overall quality of life, but significantly so only in men.
Huh. So for men in that study, having their own separate interests was more directly linked to their personal well-being than it was for the women.
That's what this particular study indicated, yeah. It suggests maybe slightly different pathways to individual fulfillment within the context of a relationship, potentially. More research needed there, of course.
Always. Okay, finally, let's tackle the controversy corner. The genetics of love. We're seeing dating startups, like Fearmore was one example, claiming they can match people based on DNA. Is this the future or just hype?
Ah, yes, the siren song of genetic matchmaking. The claim is definitely appealing. These companies suggest they use specific genes, often around 11 genes within the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC.
MHC, that's related to the immune system, right?
Exactly. It's central to immune function. The underlying theory is that humans, perhaps subconsciously, prefer partners with different MHC genes than their own.
Why? What's the benefit of different immune genes?
The idea is it leads to offspring with more diverse immune systems, making them more robust, better able to fight off a wider range of pathogens. And the theory posits we might sense this MHC difference through subtle cues like body odor or scent.
Okay, so the startups are selling DNA tests to find your immunologically compatible, best-smelling match.
That's the pitch. But here's where the controversy comes in. How solid is that science, especially applied to individual human mate choice?
And the verdict from experts.
The expert caution is pretty widespread and clear. Philematologists, genetic researchers who actually study this stuff, they consistently caution that the science remains largely theoretical and unproven in humans at this scale.
So the big genetic mapping projects haven't confirmed it.
They've yielded really inconsistent results. Sometimes they find a slight preference for MHC diversity. Sometimes they find the opposite. Sometimes no effect at all. It's definitely not a settled science for human mate choice.
So bottom line, there are no specific confirmed attraction genes that guarantee you'll fall for someone.
Not that we know of, no. And there are no scientifically proven human pheromones that reliably trigger specific mating behaviors like you see in insects or maybe mice.
Right.
The evolutionary theory about MHE diversity makes sense, but translating that into a reliable dating algorithm for individual humans, that remains highly speculative, according to most experts in the field. Your own brain's natural addiction and bonding circuits are probably a much better guide than a genetic test, at least for now.
Okay, we've been through the chaos, the chemistry, the evolution, the categories, the trends. Let's end on the profound why. Why bother with all this effort? Why should we find and maintain love? So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
It means, fundamentally, that love isn't a luxury item. It's not just icing on the cake. The data strongly suggests it's critical to our basic physical survival and our psychological flourishing.
Critical how? Let's start with physical survival.
The longevity data is probably the most stunning piece. People with strong, loving social bonds and romantic love is often the strongest of those have a 50% greater chance of living longer than people with weak or insufficient connections.
50%. 50, that's huge.
It's huge. Statistically, that survival benefit is on par with the effect of quitting smoking or starting regular exercise if you were sedentary.
Wow, that really elevates love from just an emotional need to a core biological imperative. How does having these bonds actually protect us physically?
Several ways. Loving relationships are associated with reduced biological markers of cardiovascular disease, things like lower blood pressure, better heart rate variability. They also act as a literal buffer against stress.
How? By lowering stress hormone.
Exactly. In supportive relationships, we see consistently lower baseline levels of cortisol and other damaging stress hormones. And the body's stress response, when it does happen, tends to be less extreme and recovers faster.
And it even helps with physical pain.
It does. Feeling genuinely loved, supported, or even just viewing images of a supportive partner has been shown to literally lessen the perception of physical pain. It activates brain regions that seem to buffer against physical discomfort.
Amazing. And the flip side is also true, right? Losing that bond,
Yeah,
it hurts physically.
absolutely. We touched on this earlier. Social rejection, like a bad breakup or intense loneliness, activates the same neural areas as physical pain, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex.
So when people say heartbreak feels like physical pain, they're not just being dramatic.
They are not being dramatic. Their brain is processing that social pain using much of the same circuitry it uses for a physical injury, like a burn or a fracture. And tragically, the data on loss is stark. The death of a spouse increases the surviving partner's risk of dying early by a staggering 48%. Our attachment system is profoundly tied to our physical safety and survival mechanisms.
Okay, that's the physical side. What about psychological flourishing? Mental health, happiness.
Here, the evidence is just as strong. We have insights from huge long-term studies like the Harvard Study of Adult Development.
Right, the one that tracked people for what, over 80 years?
That's the one. And its clearest, most definitive conclusion after all those decades was this. The single most powerful predictor of a long, healthy, and happy life wasn't wealth, career success, social class, or even genetics. It was the quality of people's strong, loving relationships.
Wow. More important than money or fame.
By far. Secure, loving attachments are the cornerstone of mental health. They're directly associated with lower rates of depression, lower rates of anxiety, greater resilience to stress across the entire lifespan.
Now, you mentioned love activates the same reward pathways as addiction. Is there a therapeutic angle there? Can love or similar experiences actually help combat addiction?
There's growing evidence suggesting yes. The same reward pathways that drive the obsession of early love can potentially be harnessed for recovery
Wow.
through what are called self-expanding experiences. Things like falling in love, yes, but also learning a new skill, mastering a challenging hobby, engaging deeply in meaningful work or spirituality. These activities provide alternative, healthy sources of reward and dopamine.
So they compete with the substance or behavior.
Exactly. These positive attachments and engaging self-expanding experiences might help attenuate or weaken the neural activity associated with substance craving. It's like retraining the brain's reward system, steering it towards healthier, more sustainable sources of satisfaction and meaning.
Okay, this is all incredibly compelling. But it's not just abstract science for the listener. What are the practical, actionable insights? Based on all this research, how can someone actively cultivate more loving relationships in their own life?
Great question. Based on the themes in the research, we can point to 3 key areas for action.
Okay, number one.
Nurturing secure attachment. Now, ideally, this starts in early childhood with responsive caregivers, but it's never too late to cultivate the behaviors of secure attachment in your adult relationships.
What does that look like in practice?
It means consciously prioritizing trust and emotional safety, being reliable for your partner, being responsive when they reach out, making an effort to understand their needs, and feeling safe enough to be vulnerable yourself. If you consistently practice these behaviors, you build a stronger foundation for giving and receiving love.
Okay. Cultivate secure attachment behaviors. Number 2.
Prioritize self-expansion. This is vital, whether you're single, dating, or in a long-term relationship.
Self-expansion meaning new hobbies, learning things.
Exactly. Actively engaging in new, interesting, challenging activities, hobbies, sports, creative pursuits, academic interests. These provide personal reward, they boost your self-concept, they give you things to be passionate about outside the relationship.
Why is that so important for love?
Because the goal is to have multiple, diverse sources of reward and self-worth in your life. It makes you more resilient. If one source, like a relationship, hits a rough patch or even ends, having other fulfilling activities provides a buffer. They can help fill that dopamine deficit, ease the withdrawal, and help you heal or adapt, reducing the risk of feeling completely lost.
Makes sense. Don't put all your reward eggs in one basket. Okay, number 3.
Practice micro-practices of love and compassion. You don't need grand gestures every day. Simple, small acts have measurable biological effects.
Like what kind of micro practices?
Things like practicing loving kindness meditation, even for just a few minutes, or even simpler, consciously placing a hand on your heart for, say, 20 seconds, breathing deeply, and offering genuinely kind and loving thoughts toward yourself.
Just to yourself.
Yes, self-compassion is key. These simple acts have been shown to measurably boost feelings of connection and, get this, actually lower stress hormones, like cortisol. They're like tiny training sessions for your body and mind, tuning them towards calm, connection, and companionate love. Hashtag outro.
So we started this deep dive with love as this kind of grand enigma, didn't we? And we've ended up with a pretty clear set of data points, biological functions, even specific neural circuits.
We really have. We saw that incredible 90-fold explosion in academic research influence, confirming love is now firmly in the realm of hard science, with the U.S., particularly the UC system, leading the way.
And we broke down the components that quadruple framework of connection, respect, trust, and attraction. And we peered into the neural chaos of early love.
Yeah, where dopamine-driven addiction meets cortisol-fueled stress, and the rational prefrontal cortex takes a bit of a nap.
Right. And then the crucial transition to long-term stability.
Driven by those bonding hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin, apparently co-opting our most ancient maternal bonding circuits to keep pairs together.
We saw love as this complex evolutionary toolkit designed to ensure survival through things like mate assessment via kissing, costly courtship signaling.
All culminating in those profound, measurable, life-extending health benefits. That 50% increased chance of longevity, statistically, like quitting smoking, it's just incredible.
But despite all this incredible scientific analysis, the fMRI scans showing brains aligning, the chemical markers, the evolutionary logic, we're still kind of left with this profound realization, aren't we? That it's precisely this complexity that makes love so powerful, so transformative.
I think so. It's clearly a biological mandate, wired deep into us for survival, but fulfilling that mandate successfully requires real, conscious human effort. It requires discipline.
Discipline, how do you mean?
Well, think about it. The sheer demands of managing those 4 ultimate evolutionary functions, navigating those intense overlapping neural circuits shared with addiction, and constantly actively negotiating connection, respect, trust, and attraction in a relationship. It suggests that love, practiced well, is perhaps the most fundamental, yet also the most demanding moral and psychological discipline we undertake as humans. Science can map the wiring, it can explain the why, but it's still you, the individual, who has to choose day after day to build and maintain that bond.
So the final provocative thought for our listeners, even with terabytes of data, can science ever truly measure the magic?
That's the question, isn't it? Is that ineffable quality, that feeling that goes beyond the chemicals and circuits, actually essential to love's transformative power? Or will we eventually quantify it all? It's a question science keeps probing, but maybe it's also one you have to answer for yourself every day in the context of your own relationships.